Mr. Francois de Maricourt, the Chief Executive Officer, HSBC, Bangladesh, to come and give his opening remarks.
Thank you very much. So, good evening, everybody, and thank you for making the time to be here with us. As we all know, export is a key contributor of the GDP growth in Bangladesh. The apparel industry and the export in the apparel segment are very critical to the success of Bangladesh. We have recently commissioned a report to look at the future of Bangladesh. Not for 1 year, not for 3 years, not for 5 years, but for the coming 15 years. Because when you make an investment decision, you need to look at long term. And what our economists are saying is that we expect a growth rate of 5.5% per year for the coming 15 years in Bangladesh, which is one of the fastest growing economy in the world as per our economics. This is quite exciting, and we are really delighted to be here and to be part of this story of growth. But there are also a few challenges. And part of this panel discussion is really to see how we can make this happen, how we can support it. You know that HSBC is the leading international trade bank, and I am just back from Hong Kong, where I was really honored to receive the award of Best Foreign Bank in Bangladesh for 2015. And we really want to contribute to this growth, and this panel discussion today is about seeing how we can make it all happen. Because of course the government has a responsibility to play, and when we talk about challenges, we talk quite often about infrastructure. So let's discuss together what we can do in order to have a sustainable growth so that we can meet this target and support the growth of Bangladesh. Thank you very much.
I'd now like to invite Shariful Islam, founder of the Bangladesh Brand Forum, to deliver what he is describing as a scene-setting presentation on the apparel export of Bangladesh.
On behalf of Bangladesh Brand Forum, it's my tremendous pleasure to welcome all of you in this very important panel discussion, which is part of the 6th version of the HSBC Export Award. Many of the facts are already known. We know how important the sector is for Bangladesh, contributing 10% of the GDP with $25.5 billion of global exports. The apparel sector contributes 82% of the total export, and that's a very, very big number. What is very interesting to see that this also speaks of the resilience of the sector. In fact, we have performed better than any prediction which has been made over the last 10 to 15 years. And that talks about the strength of the people behind the sector, the core ecosystem that has been created by financial institutions like HSBC, research institutions, and of course, government officials. If we look at the basic socio-economic impact, it's really extremely positive and something to be very proud of. 4 million people are employed, a large number of them are female. 16 million people are directly supported as families from this sector. And very, very important fact, this sector has directly contributed to the poverty reduction of 9% point over a period of time. So as a country, I think this is much more important just looking at the numbers, which sometimes do not reveal. If we look into the overall impact on the economy, we know there are very strong numbers. I will not go into each of them. From shipping sector to inland transport to direct taxes that the sector is generating, even the salary paid every month, 2,000 crores taka of salary is paid in the sector. So overall in the economy, it's having a very, very positive impact. But we always say it is not just numbers. In fact, if you look at the women's life expectancy, it has grown over the period of last 30 years by 15 years, and which is directly attributed to the impact of the sector. So something which is very, very important for a country like Bangladesh. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening, and I hope we have a very fruitful discussion which will throw us more light into what, as a sector, we should be doing. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Sharif. A very thought-provoking presentation. Well, I'd like to sort of begin with the government. And so obviously my question to Mr. Jalal Ahmed, if you could kindly tell us in brief sort of what are the key government initiatives that you have from the government to support the industry?
As we all know, the Bangladesh the economy is mainly export driven and remittance driven. After 80s, RMG came in. So this is the RMG is the most important component now in our export arena. From the government side, certainly we have identified the areas where we need to do further work, like infrastructure. It is very important. It relates not only with export, it relates with a lot more other things. But for export, it is very important.
But do you think the government can do something further in terms of introducing this particular sector into the technical and vocational training academy?
Yes, in fact, in this respect, we are working with the government technical training institutes run by the Ministry of Labour and Employment and Ministry of Expected Welfare, because both these ministries, they have their own training institutes.
If I'm not mistaken, the Honourable Prime Minister is heading that Skill Development Council.
The Prime Minister is the chair of this National Skill Development Council.
At this point, I would like to bring it back to the three representatives from the apparel industry. Based on what we've just heard from Mr. Jalal, how do you react in terms of government initiatives, one, in terms of skill development, two?
As you know, the way is economy growing, or the textile apparel sector is growing, our expectation is always much higher than what government is doing. To tell you frankly, honest opinions. No doubt, the government has taken a lot of initiatives, but lot need to do to achieve the 50 billion or beyond that, achieve that target.
Just agree with Hasnat, but our expectation is more. And I see that implementation, I see that lot of policy being done. We are thinking and we are planning, we are talking, but I see that implementation part is very slow. I hope in coming days we should work together. Same thing. I say that, this is BGME is there, and our newly formed BGME has, I see a lot of bright leaders. I think we really have to work together. And this is like we should have to have a right communication.
Certainly from BGME we do agree that government has taken a lot of initiatives, but these initiatives should have been taken or could have been taken long back, and that would have taken our industry to a different level at this moment.
So we've heard the government's initiatives, and now I'm going to ask a think tank person, Professor Mustafiz Rahman, in terms of the policy framework, what are the key areas you think should be addressed? We've heard from Mr. Jalal on what initiatives have been taken.
I think that even in a market-driven economy, there are market failures. And that's where the role of the government comes. And as Mr. Jalal has rightly mentioned, if you look at this, the genesis of this sector, and you look back, you will see that the cash compensation scheme of 25%, the bonded warehouse facilities, Bangladesh Bank allowing back-to-back LCs against master LCs, all these government policies played such an important role in terms of advancing the interests of the entrepreneurs, the enterprises, and this sector. I think it is the trick of the trade is to be ahead of the curve, because if you are working and others are running, you will fall behind. It's critical to realizing the ambition of the $50 billion that we have set for ourselves, and I think that government can help as well as it can also harm. So all those areas are where we need smart policies and the capacity to implement those policies.
Yes, you're right that the government has to facilitate a lot more. And I think we have seen the government shifting, as I think Mr. Hasnat also said, that the government has shifted its thinking. From a regulator, it's trying to be more of a facilitator, which is, I think, what everyone wants. I think we'll take a few seconds to think about everything that has been said and then come back with the next question. On that point, I'd like to invite Arun Devnath to give us his opinions on how the media is looking at the government initiatives, at the industry initiatives, and as you also heard, the think tank's view of what needs to be done.
The industry people and the government should take the media as a friend. There's a new law, the labor law. The government took a lot of time to make the rules under that, to implement the law. And when you see that we didn't get back the GSP facilities from the United States this year as well.
You're talking about the GSP and Bangladesh not being on the GSP for the US. If I sort of turn the question around, without the GSP we have made the progress. So obviously we can do a lot even without it.
Okay,
Now 20%, only 20% of that export goes to the US, whereas the 80% is Europe and other countries. From that perspective, I mean, do you see enough effort being made in exploring the markets where we're already doing well, or to penetrate them further, or to seek new ones?
We need GSP not because of financial gains or benefits. It's image.
I'd just like to bring this one back to Professor Farhat here, because I'd like to ask him, in terms of image, right, what needs to be done?
Thank you so much. First of all, let me thank HSBC for inviting me. Let me start off with one particular aspect, which is GSP is not necessarily pride. GSP is preference. So preference is given to countries or individuals who lack certain things. So if it is lifted, we should take it with pride rather than with a pinch of salt. That is one aspect that we need to understand. Let's look into the reality. The reality check is the brands come here, or buyers come to Bangladesh because they want cost efficiency, period. Nothing else. They don't look for anything else. They're not crying for us. They don't care where they get their product from, and that is the reason why they came in here. Have we been doing it rightly? As of now, yes. So automatically the perspective comes into, the question comes in is, how can we further ensure that we maintain that competitiveness, which our professor was stating that we have our competitive advantage. How can we bring in our competitive advantage? So the competitive advantage has to be brought in focusing on production. So I feel that our branding has to be focused on, number one, cost efficiency through bringing in efficiency in production, and all these support activities that is focused on production. Now we've been talking about the responsibility of the government. We talk about the responsibility of the manufacturers. Do we talk about the responsibility of the media? If the media comes up with the views only and not news, then that is not a media. And in most of the cases we talk about media comes up with their own views, not news. And this is where they've got to do a reality check of themselves.
I would like to ask Mr. Jabbar, who is a past winner, since winning the Export Excellence Award, what has changed for your company and you?
Award by HSBC, and it had motivators, encouraged us, the whole team. So this is we became focused. We work hard together, and then such an encouragement that I see that we have improved in a lot of other ways. Like we really concentrated in sustainability. You know, the people. We also concentrate people, product, process, community, and environment.
I want to invite Francois to give a comment, and that is that one element of sustainable development is obviously to change yourself as you go ahead, because today what you consider development will change tomorrow, the priority will change. Now, how can HSBC, with its network of international banking, with its knowledge of markets and businesses there, how can you be, in a way, a facilitator to help exporters such as DBL Group go into new markets?
We are, I think, one of the largest international banks, And so with our network, what we are trying to do is to use our connectivity to have them to connect with different partners. So we publish quite a lot of different research issued by our economists on what's happening in other markets, in other industries, in order to really be able to share best practices. We also facilitate some meetings because, you know, when we were founded in 1865, that was 150 years ago, we were funded by traders. And so really for us, one of the key things is to see how we can support trade. If we come back to one of the enablers that was mentioned, I think it was around the brand. And I think that also here we have perhaps a role to play, because we all know that the brand Bangladesh is not as strong as it should be. And I think that is not only one single person that can do something. I think that we all, really all, have to work on say, how can we improve this brand? And I have to say, you know, I've been in Bangladesh for less than 1 year, and so I'm still relatively new. And when I came here, I did not have a very positive perception of Bangladesh. And I was surprised when I arrived here to see the gap between the perception and the reality. And I think that as a partner of quite a lot of business people in Bangladesh, that's an area where we can also play a part and help people to better understand Bangladesh, what is happening, and see how we can improve its perception.
I did have a question for Mr. Hasnat, but before that, a gentleman had raised his hand to ask a question. If you could kindly state your name, sir, and your organization, and then proceed with the question. Please also say who you want the question to be answered by.
In fact, this is Pradeep. I am the CFO of Hsbc Group. Do we have a checklist of sustainable development of apparel export? Number one. Number two, if it is so, if you have a comprehensive list, do you have a KPI, short term, long term? And who are the responsible persons for that KPI?
So, Mr. Riaz.
Thank you very much. We definitely do have a checklist that how you get the membership. As far as your question is concerned regarding the sustainability development, we have recently started some of the steps. We are doing environmental sustainability and water treatment sustainability, different kind of project we have started with IFC, with GIZ. So we as a trade body, we are taking some initiatives.
Yes, another question.
Yeah, I'm Saiful Islam, CFO of Envoy Textiles Limited. My question is very specific to Mustafizur sir. Basically, presently all the industry are facing huge power crisis, and this actually hampering our almost 20 to 30% productivity. In fact, I will say by specific this month we will basically lose by around 30% productivity in our industry. So how actually we can achieve our 50 billion target within 2021 if the scenario continues and the government is not liberal to offering their connection?
Thank you for that question, but actually I think that should be directed to Mr. Jalal, who is the government's representative in this session, and not Professor Mustafiz. So I know you can, but I'd rather the government answer that one.
Thank you. Regarding the power problem you have mentioned, we are all aware that production of power has almost doubled in last 6 years, and the installed capacity is now almost 12,000 megawatt. Production is more than 7,000 megawatt. Sometimes it touches 7,500 or 600. So demand as well gone up. In the gas sector, I was chairman Petrobangla once in 2007-8-9. So in the gas sector, in fact, the production has gone up certainly in last 6 years. It is more than 300 or 400 mmCFD has been added. But a lot more can be done and should be done if we want to achieve this target. So which I was talking that more engagement will be required with the business board, trade body and the government. And certainly this government is open.
I certainly had more questions, but we have to respect time, and I know all of you are very busy people. But, you know, in terms of talking about sustainable development, we've heard the views of the industry, we've heard the views of the government, we've heard the view of the think tanks, and to a certain extent academia and the media. we haven't heard HSBC's view. I'd like Bhuvnesh Khanna to tell us how he sees, based on what HSBC has experienced through its customers, what he sees the future going ahead. And I'd like him to tell us, because it's their award, what they mean by excellence.
Thank you. I think it's been a very interesting discussion so far, and I think this is the easiest question, so thank you very much for that. If you see, Francois started with the in-house research, which we mentioned about HSBC, and there was the McKinsey report today. So I think the opportunity, the future, that's very clear. Couple of things which I see from my perspective, which I find very relevant, is the resilience. That's something, I've been here slightly over a year, and the customers I meet, I mean, the resilience is amazing. And I've, in my individual discussions with them, I've referred to, the kind of challenges they've gone through, and despite that, the way they're growing. That is a very strong positive which needs to be retained. Secondly, I think any growth requires a strong foundation. And we see that, whether it is in product development, going further into the value chain, setting in corporate governance practices, being open to adopting best practices from other places. I think that's also something which is going on quite well. The one thing which I think is I've not seen too much of, but is relevant. We heard a lot about comparisons with China, the challenge, what's happening in India. But one thing where there could be more done is in terms of not whom you're competing with today, but with whom you are going to compete tomorrow. And maybe a little bit more visionary thinking into how are we going to face that challenge. If you go across the industry, and you've seen there's always a cycle. Before the session started, we were talking about the 20-25-year cycle, and then it moves to another country. Now, if we are aware that that cycle is there, who are those people who are coming, who are going to take on the baton from us, and where do we move in the value chain then? I think that's really also an important leg to build in that sustainability. So that's from my end.
Well, thank you very much for, I think, what was an enthralling early evening discussion. Have we covered all aspects? Probably not. But then sustainable is a very big word. Development is an even bigger word. But I'm sure that all of us working together, we shall at least get to, if not, to use an old marketing adage, if not 100%, then we can aim at 80 and perhaps end up with 60. But at least we will get somewhere. But it's, I think, the togetherness, the concept, the branding, telling people of Bangladesh, telling of the progress that's been made, post all those debacles. We've made a lot of improvements. I'd like to thank everyone who's been present here. Sustainable development, a 50 billion market, everything's possible. Why? Because everything that's been achieved today was not even considered to be possible. So if you've already achieved something that was at one stage impossible, you just have to take the I am out of the possible and separate from the possible, and it becomes very clear. Thank you very much for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you again.